I talk to my buddies. I know what happens. You know, they pick up another buddy, 2 or 3, they go out, go golfing, and there's nothing wrong with golfing. The problem is the mobility. Then after golf, they go back, they have a few pops. That's the problem.
The Prime Minister received his first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Will he be getting a second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine, 2 doses of Pfizer or Moderna, or 1 dose of Pfizer or Moderna in the future? Which one will it be?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honourable Member for Nose Hill for her questions about my well-being. Let me assure her that I talked to my doctor just last week. He recommended that I indeed get a second dose of AstraZeneca in the coming weeks or months when it becomes available, when my turn comes up in the month of Ontario, in the province of Ontario. That is what I am focused on doing. I know there are questions being asked around the world about the data that involves mixing and matching doses. There are no recommendations around that yet, but I know scientists are leaning in carefully to see if it may be the right option for many people.
Honourable Member for Calgary, Nose Hill.
Is the Prime Minister and the government recommending that people who received the first dose of AstraZeneca get a second dose of AstraZeneca with that comment he just made, or is he advising them to contact their doctor?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister and the government don't make health recommendations. That's not my job. My job is I shared, for example, what the member asked, what advice I personally got from my doctor. I certainly encourage all Canadians to talk to their doctors, who will then be informed by experts and doctors both in their jurisdictions, in their provinces and territories, and by the national guidance from NACI and from Health Canada. That is the best way to move forward. Don't take recommendations from politicians, particularly not Conservatives. Take recommendations from your doctors and the experts.
Manitoba finds itself tonight in a precarious position. With 430 COVID cases, it is the worst infection rate per capita on either side of the border. Across Canada, over 4,500 Canadians tested positive and 35 people died of the virus. It's the variants driving this lightning-fast surge in Manitoba. CTV's Jill Makashon on the strain inside the province's hospitals.
Never before have so many COVID patients filled Manitoba's intensive care units, and more of them are young. A record 73 COVID patients are now in ICU. 9 of them are under 40 years old.
One thing that we are seeing that's a positive is those that get better, they seem to get better faster. But there are a lot of them who don't get better quickly, and they tend to stay for quite a long time.
Per capita, Manitoba has the highest daily infection rate in all of the U.S. and Canada. Experts say cases will continue to climb, and so will hospitalizations. With elective surgeries scaled back, 100 medical staff have now been redeployed to help.
Manitoba's healthcare system continues to be stretched due to the high volume of case counts.
Recent modeling shows infections and hospitalizations in Manitoba are exceeding worst-case scenarios. But there is hope. Restrictions tightened 2 weeks ago will finally bring infection rates lower, and vaccination campaigns are ramping up. Every Manitoban over 12 years old now qualifies for a first dose. Today, teenagers at this Indigenous clinic were among the first youth vaccinated.
I've waited patiently all these months, and it feels like my patience has been awarded with the vaccine.
Vaccines, doctors say, have already changed the demographics of this third wave. Residents in Winnipeg's long-term care homes devastated in fall and winter are counting only a handful of cases now. It's the unvaccinated that are getting sick, and Manitoba's top doctor says if the numbers don't level off, the province could enact a stay-at-home order.
Now that there's finally some light at the end of this pandemic tunnel, at least for the U.S. and wealthier countries that are hoarding all the vaccines, anti-vaxxers are now reconsidering the use of masks, not to protect against COVID-19, but to protect themselves from people who have been vaccinated. But here from Vice, anti-maskers ready to start masking to protect themselves from the vaccinated. An anti-vaccine conspiracy about the vaccinated are leading some anti-maskers and anti-vaxxers to contemplate wearing a mask and social distance. The virus apparently wasn't enough. Seeing millions of people get infected, millions of people die all over the world, That wasn't enough. The virus may somehow, someone else being vaccinated may somehow infect them like a virus would. So let me get a little more into this. This is the conspiracy here, what this is all based on. So the conspiracy, which comes in several shapes and sizes, more or less says the vaccinated will shed, quote unquote, shed certain proteins onto the unvaccinated, who will then suffer adverse effects. The main worry is the shedding will cause irregular menstruation, infertility, and miscarriages. The entirely baseless idea is a key cog in a larger conspiracy that COVID-19 was a ploy to depopulate the world, and the vaccine is what will cull the masses. Depopulate the world. Now, of course, let me get to those facts. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I don't claim to be. But I listen to people who know what they're talking about in this field. So, quote, there is no way for a COVID-19 vaccinated person to shed vaccine, the Centers for Disease Control's COVID-19 clinical trial team said in an email responding to Reuters questions. Quote, COVID-19 vaccines give instructions to teach our cells how to make a protein, or even just a piece of a protein, that triggers an immune response inside our bodies. After the protein piece is made, the cell breaks down the instructions and gets rid of them. The immune response, which produces antibodies, is what protects us from getting infected if the real virus enters our bodies. The team also stated the vaccines cannot cause people to shed the COVID-19 virus, echoing all the other experts Reuters spoke to, saying, quote, COVID-19 vaccines do not use the live virus that causes COVID-19 and cannot cause COVID-19. Therefore, people who receive a COVID-19 vaccine cannot shed the virus or the vaccine. And really, all you have to do is look at countries that actually are getting vaccinated. Israel is close to 100% vaccinated. The U.S. is getting there. You're not seeing a widespread irregular menstruation, infertility, and miscarriages. This is all made up.
We're just asking people. I understand, believe me, the weather's nice. Everyone wants to get out. You know, I'd love to get out golfing. I'm a terrible golfer, but I'd love to get out golfing. And right now, you know, the ICUs are still at risk. I think yesterday's number was 805, and that's not good. As much as we're seeing a decline, which is good, everyone, you know, is moving forward. We're getting the vaccines into people's arms, but we just can't risk it. Just hang in there. We aren't asking a lot.
An Okanagan business is causing a stir in Kelowna by banning vaccinated people and the wearing of masks inside the store. Quote, we would rather not be exposed to people who have been vaccinated and who could shed the virus, said Steve Merrill, Sun City Silver and Gold Exchange's owner. Oh my friggin' God. Anti-vax influencers are instructing their fellow anti-vaxxers as well as anti-maskers. At this point, the two communities overlap to a huge degree. That one of the best ways to defend themselves from this blight is to co-opt social distancing, the very strategy they have long decried. It's not just social distancing anti-maskers / anti-vaxxers are begrudgingly accepting. Some conspiracy theorists are wondering if perhaps their longtime bane, the mask, could become their salvation. One perplexed poster on the fringe site 4chan asked their fellow Anons if they should wear a mask around the vaccinated because they shed the mRNA stuff. Quote, I'm going to be watching these vaccine shedding stories like a hawk, wrote another man on Twitter. Is my family going to need to wear masks to protect ourselves from the vaccinated? We are in a world where I don't know if we can come back from this. The internet has brought us many great things. The access to information is greater than ever. But with that also comes the access to misinformation. So you have millions of people who, for whatever reason, again, I have a hard time understanding the mindset of these individuals, but for whatever reason, are deeply distrustful of experts, of scientists, of doctors, of experts in their field. Now, so, you know, you can link this potentially to real fears, real anger at Big Pharma, at this idea that, I mean, it's a fact that doctors are educated to essentially treat you with a pill.
Well, the enforcement of the court order followed the decision of a Superior Court judge this morning. The church and its leader, though, have no intentions of backing down, saying the pandemic restrictions are unconstitutional. And as CTV's Nick Paparella reports, the fight may be far from over.
Via Zoom, Justice Bruce Thomas told the court the Church of God and its pastor Henry Hildebrand have been disobeying the law for months, saying these regulations and the state of emergency were put in place to protect the health of the community and save lives at a time of soaring infection rates and overflowing hospitals. He added, Henry Hildebrand, as pastor of this church, is the leading force and unapologetic spokesperson for this offending activity. The church and its leaders were charged under the Reopening Ontario Act and then found in contempt of court for not complying. Even after being charged and ordered not to gather, they had worship services with hundreds of people indoors. Justice Thomas fined the church and its leaders, including Hildebrand, a total of $48,000 and ordered the church be locked up. Hildebrand, who is making a constitutional challenge in court this fall, says this is far from over.
We've got the charter behind us, we've got the Bill of Rights, got the criminal code for us. And in Canada, usually you are innocent until proven guilty. But I guess this time we're guilty until proven innocent because we're going to court in October to see if our charter holds or not.
Justice Thomas said time and time again, the church and its leaders openly and flagrantly ignored the COVID-19 restrictions and that protecting the public while in the middle of a global pandemic is paramount.
I am absolutely not willing to kill the population for a virus that has not been proven. Do I deny that there is a virus? No, but it's not right.
The judge's ruling attracted a steady stream of onlookers to the church. Some who have stayed away from their own places of worship agreed with the court's decision.
I think it's a good idea if they protect themselves and protect everybody else too, that way.
We have dealt with it for too long. They don't abide by the rules. They don't follow anything. And it's time the Ontario government stepped up and did something about it.
I was just waiting for this for a long time already. Yeah, we can't have a church. What can they?
Elmer police showed up at the church and say they expect to return with the sheriff to lock the facility up in the next 24 hours. Hildebrand says his congregation is planning a picnic outdoors when they arrive.
Unfortunately, right now, our government is allowing the health officials to push the judges to make criminals out of law-abiding citizens. That's what's happening here.
A group of people who don't agree with wearing a mask or following restrictions. Our government went to court to seek an injunction, and that was granted today, preventing this group and any other from organizing, preventing, and participating in a gathering against the protocols. I am personally all for freedom of speech, but I will not allow the select few to jeopardize our ability to crush this third wave. People have a right to share their views, but while we're in a province-wide shutdown in the middle of a third wave, it is incumbent for all of us to protect each other by following public health protocols. If people don't think this virus is real and don't believe in science, look around and think again.
According to the Government of Canada's website, vaccinated people are not exempt from the travel rules.
Frankly, was very surprised by that. I had assumed that Canadian students studying abroad who must come home for the summer would be exempted from staying in a hotel.
Are you enjoying your first day without masks?
U.S. President Joe Biden on Friday said he was enjoying new mask guidance from the CDC, as were many vaccinated Americans who were told the day before that they no longer needed to mask up outdoors and indoors in most cases.
I feel liberated.
Let's see it.
But amid the celebration was plenty of confusion as well.
I think maybe it's best to keep it on until everyone else collectively decides to do so.
Jackson Mingle said he was vaccinated but not quite ready to shed the mask until it becomes common practice. Jerry Kelly, who visited D.C. from Oregon, said she couldn't be sure if someone without a mask was actually vaccinated.
I'm just concerned that the next person, how honest are they going to be?
We have all longed for this moment.
The CDC's sudden shift in guidance left many questions unanswered. When can Americans go to the gym without a mask, or walk into a restaurant or a baseball game without one? White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki on Friday said implementation will be left to the state and local level.
We also understand that private sector companies may decide that they want to have requirements. That's up to them to make that determination. If you are running a stadium, if you are a sports team or something like that, you have different considerations. We fully respect that, but we have no plans to change our approach from the federal government.
U.S. supermarket chain Kroger said it will continue to require customers to wear masks. Trader Joe's said it would immediately drop its mask mandate for customers who are fully vaccinated. In many parts of the U.S., people have not been wearing masks for months. Bars in Miami, for example, have been serving maskless customers for weeks. There are caveats. The looser mask guidance does not apply to certain situations, such as public transportation and prisons. There is also no approved U.S. COVID-19 vaccine for children aged 11 and younger. But U.S. officials hope the new freedoms afforded to vaccinated people will convince holdouts to get this shot too.
So a fascinating new study here in which we're seeing experiments across the country. How do we get more people to get vaccinated? Well, let's put this up there on the screen. Erie, Pennsylvania says that a free beer has resulted in more vaccinations than all of their first dose clinics last week. This comes as a whole host of different localities and states are trying to figure out, what do? We are for the very first time reaching the critical threshold where supply actually outstrips demand. You're seeing a lot of states and localities actually cutting their orders because demand is simply not keeping up with where it is. And obviously, the higher percentage of the population that we get, the closer that you get to wherever herd immunity is, nobody really knows. Some people are trying to revise it. I don't know. But I would generally say that the more people, the better. And that has led to a lot of interesting experiments. We talked about West Virginia Governor Jim Justice paying $100 of saving bonds to people who get vaccinated. And the New York Times out with a new analysis and polling. Let's put this up there. Well, guess what? A full 1/3 of people who are vaccine hesitant said that some sort of payment would actually increase their likelihood of getting the vaccine. So I think we have just stumbled upon one of the easiest ways in order to incur public health. Obviously, $100 is nothing compared to the societal cost of the benefit of a largely vaccinated population. So let's see if the GOP will jump on board this train. I am all for it, and I would love to see something like this come from the White House.
Absolutely. It would be money well spent. Yeah. The research shows it can be effective. This particular program, I just have to also give them props for a very clever name. They called it Shot and a Chaser. And on the very first day, they had a line out the door of people who, they weren't necessarily hesitant. They just kind of hadn't gotten around to it. And this was like the last little bump to be like, okay, sure, let me go and get this done. Sounds like fun. A little bit of inducement. Never heard anything.
Wearing face masks is a critical public health measure that helps prevent the spread of COVID-19. That's why we've recommended wearing them for more than a year, and why we've had a provincial mask mandate in place since December. Individuals are only exempt from wearing a mask in public places in certain circumstances. These include being unable to put on or take off a mask independently, if someone is eating or drinking while sitting down, if there is an occupational risk for wearing a mask, and other specific situations. In addition, there are a very limited number of health issues for which a mask exemption is possible. To help prevent spread and make sure that people are masking appropriately, we are clarifying what these health issues are based on best currently available evidence. These conditions are sensory processing disorders, developmental delay or cognitive impairment, mental illness disorders, facial trauma or recent oral or jaw surgery, contact dermatitis or allergic reactions to mask components, or clinically significant acute respiratory distress. Effective today, in order to verify that someone has a medical condition that makes them unable to wear a mask, Albertans with these conditions will require a medical exception letter from a health professional. This letter is important to have, especially if requested by enforcement officials for not complying with the legal requirement to wear a mask in indoor public spaces. Letters must come from a nurse practitioner, physician, or psychologist. More details about what needs to be included in this letter are available online, and guidance has been shared with the professional colleges of the healthcare practitioners who are authorized to write these letters. We are modeling this after the approaches already being used in Saskatchewan and Quebec, as well as resources developed by the Manitoba College of Physicians and Surgeons. This change is not meant to punish people unfairly. It's meant to ensure anyone who is capable of wearing a mask complies with this important public health measure, intended to keep us all safe, which is especially important during this third wave of COVID-19 in the province.
I know Prime Minister Trudeau said, I've been waiting for specific requests from Ontario, and he's disappointed. But there's Mr. Piccini and Doug Ford saying, basically, it's your fault. You failed. There's too many loopholes. You got to make people crossing land borders by land quarantine for 3 days. You're letting in private jets. There's a two-tier system. Public Safety Minister Bill Blair, essentially, they're saying, you've screwed it up. Fix it. What's your response?
Yeah, first of all, Evan, let me say that we share the concern, I think, of all Ontarians and all Canadians about the surge cases that take place in Ontario. My first response is I encourage Ontarians to look at their own data and listen to their own health experts. And for example, yesterday in Ontario, there were 2,320 cases reported in Ontario, and by Ontario's data, zero of them were related to travel. We have, the premier said 4 months ago, wanted us to drop the quarantine and replace it with rapid testing. We don't think that was the right thing to do. What we have done, though, Evan, is we continue to add layers of protection. And our approach, I think, is one of the most rigorous anywhere. We did, in fact, close our borders international travel 14 months ago. We added requirements for pre-arrival negative testing, post-arrival testing. We ordered people with 14-day quarantine and for all of the non-essential
But there are,
travel.
but to be fair, but just look, to be fair, when you closed the borders for England, when we had the variant, people just were rerouted through the United States and they came in. That basically took them about 3 seconds to bust through that. People who don't want to fly in and stay at the hotel quarantine are driving in through the land border where it's obviously a less rigorous issue. The Ontario government's wanting that to be more rigorous. Why not make that more rigorous? After all, common sense says the foreign variants are coming from the borders.
Yeah, let me just talk a little bit about the foreign variants. And as you know, on April 22nd, we saw all direct flights from the United States because I was identified by our public health officials. And by the way, it's a good time for me to point out, we actually know idea. We followed the advice of our public health officials, and we acted quickly on it. We also recognized that there was not just direct flights, but the possibility of indirect flight. For example, if someone left LA flew into Heathrow, that they could do air transfer across the aisle and not paying for it on campus. We stopped that. We introduced measures that required a person to land in the UK, to stay there and get another negative test, PCR test, before transiting on to Canada. And when they arrive, we test them again. In fact, we test everyone who arrives in the country, and we require all essential entry to undergo a 14-day quarantine. We test them again.
But I appreciate that. But if it's so good, if the system's so good, why are most of the variants, the British variant, the South African variant, like they got to come from somewhere, Bill Blair. And so you must think, well, we think we're doing a lot, but we clearly can't be doing enough if the variants have come here and ravaged so many parts of the country.
Yes, and Evan, I think most thoughtful people will recognize that, first of all, most of the people and we've reduced international travel 96%. With the measures that we've put in place. The 4% that remain is essentially two cohorts. To do the measures that we've put in
just
place,
for time.
I'm not suggesting they've been perfect, Evan, but they have been remarkably effective in slowing down the spread. And as I said yesterday, in Ontario, 0 transmissions related to travel out of 2,320 cases.
Right. But remember, I mean, I understand the math. There may not be related to travel, but when one person has it, obviously the math of how an epidemic works. They can spread it to multiple people. But just very quickly, is your government open to listening to Doug Ford and saying, hey, we'll ban international students?
We put in place some of the toughest public health measures anywhere in the country. Today, I can say they're working. The situation is slowly trending in a better direction. Make no mistake. We're not out of the woods yet. Our hospitals are still under immense pressure. The spread of variants remains a major concern. So we must stay vigilant. We must keep doing what we're doing and what's working. We need to do everything in our power to protect this summer for all Ontarians. My goal is to have the most normal July and August possible. Obviously, that won't mean large sporting events or concerts. But if we manage the next few weeks properly, I believe that we can have things in a very good place this summer. To do so, we need to keep driving cases down and easing the pressure on our hospitals. We need to maintain the stay-at-home order and all public health measures until at least June the 2nd.
This has been a Wolfie Terry production 2021.